Burton and I'm an aeromodeller and an engineer. Join me on a fascinating journey where I show you some of the techniques used in scale aeromodelling. So welcome back to the channel, folks. The wings are now, all the panels are covered, the ailerons and flaps are fitted as we've seen, and I thought I'd just give you something to watch for for a bit of time if you're kicking your heels. I'm going to try something new on the underside of the wing, some slightly different rib taping. It's not that different, but the spacing's going to be different, and I'm going to try some 1/64th chart pack tape. I'm not sure it'll work, that's why I'm going to do it on the underside, just in case it doesn't work quite as well as I'd hope. What I thought I would show you, this is the Niogel 767A that I've been waiting for from the States. The first shipment got lost in transit, and it's taken me quite some time to fight with them to, for them to believe me. Not that it's anything to do with me, but their courier lost it. Anyway, the idea of this stuff, it's a synthetic damping grease, and it's very similar to what they used to use in the Unitracts retracts for damping. So I'm going to show you what the effect is. If you remember, this moved quite rapidly. Now this is now that I've damped it. Very hard to push. You almost probably can't see that. It's still moving. Still moving. Still moving. Still moving, believe it or not. Still moving. There we are. So that's how much that grease damps, and it's making it really hard to push. So I'm probably going to end up putting even stronger springs in, but there you go. I don't know, maybe I'll leave. I just don't know yet, but I've really got to give it some tension to pull it back again. So that's what that grease does. Lovely stuff, isn't it? So it's quite expensive, and the shipping is terrible from America, but there we go. So what I'm going to do is just going to leave the camera rolling, and I'll show you the working of the rib tapes. What I've done is I've been following a friend, Bruce, on Full Size Chipmunk website, and they're very friendly on the Chipmunk website on Facebook. They are a really nice group, and there's one guy that does a lot of fabric work, and he's quite chatty with me, and which is fantastic. Anyway, he's just done a chipmunk wing, fabric covered it, and he said what he's done is he's drawn parallel lines to the spar at 2.5 inches back. What he actually said he's done is 2.5 inches on the upper surface back, each line, and 2 inches on the underside between each line. The actual rule that the RAF laid down in the maintenance manual is that in the prop wash, these should be 2 inches apart, the stitches, and outside of the prop wash, just 2 inches apart. So what I've gone for is 2.5 inches overall, which will look fine, I'm sure. But as it's proven, the guy that's doing this full-size chipmunk is doing it how he feels is right. So I think you're going to find you're going to have to look at your subject aircraft to get the stitching exactly the same as your subject aircraft is at the time that you want to model it. But as this is a practice, we'll go for 2.5 inches all over, which works out at 16 millimeters between each one. So what I've done is I've drawn parallel lines, well, not parallels, I've put a mark on each rib, coming back from the spar, parallel to the spar, coming down, and then along here they actually stop because of because of the taper of the trailing edge. So I'm going to put some 1/64th chart pack tape on there, and then I'm going to put probably just the Mick Reeves rib tapes on, just to see how it looks, and see if we get the definition of the stitch. Because with the 1/32, I'm finding I think the definition is a little bit too flat. It looks like something flat is underneath the tape. It certainly does on the ailerons on the upper surface. So we'll see how it looks with 1/64th chart pack tape. And this is the stuff, 1/64th of an inch wide. It's a vinyl self-adhesive. All right, we'll give that a go. and it's very fiddly, as you'd expect. I'm trying to make the stitches just outside of the green tape, as if it's gone down the side of the green tape across and then down the other side of the green tape. Some people have said, "Oh, that's not scale. On the full size, they weren't that accurate." Well, my friend Bruce, who does do fabric work on full size, is as anal as I am, it seems. So they were, or some people were, that fastidious about aligning everything. Obviously not all. And again, I refer you back to my first statement, or my earlier statement, that says basically you've got to look at your subject and see how they've done it. I'm already liking the look of this. One thing that I have spotted that I would like to try and figure out a way of doing is the rib pinked tapes. The material is such that it doesn't flatten down on the stitches very well, and you actually end up with a little bit of a lifted bit between the stitches. And if you look at the full size, you'll see that the fabric actually has gone completely flat right over the stitch and all the way around it. There's not a sort of an air gap where the tape has lifted. It's pushed right down. So what I might do when I do these tapes is when I put the tape on and I heat the cloth, the fabric, to glue it down, rather than it being a flat surface that is just pushing it down, I'm going to heat it in the general area, and then I'm going to push down with a little piece of cloth, or a little piece of leather is what I'm actually going to use. And that'll hopefully push the fabric down right hard onto the stitch until it sets and it's glued down, and then I'll move on to the next one. I know it sounds a bit over the top perhaps, but that's what I'm going to try. So I think you're getting the idea. So what I'll do is I'll stop the camera and I'll do the rest of this. That should take another couple of hours, and then I'll turn the camera back on when we're putting some of the pinked tape on over the top. I've added all the pinked tapes to the bottoms of the ribs, and I think the 1/64 chart tape has worked quite well. I've used an iron-on film that I've actually cut into strips to make the pinked tapes. The reason I did this is because this is this material is much thinner than the Solartex. This is the Diatex 1000, but it is much thinner. My only concern is whether the stitch actually is pronounced enough. I want it to be narrow, but I need it to be quite sharp. And I can feel them. When you run your finger along them, I can feel them. So I'll be very interested to see how these look once they're finished and they've got some paint and some primer on. So I think I'm going to leave them like this because this model is very much an experiment. So I'll look back at this video when I do the full one and I'll think which method did I like the best, and this is one of the reasons why I've done so many different tapes on it. This is the Mick Reeves. I've also got the Pinkett tapes. I've used quite a variety, and I've also used 32nd tape and this 64th chart pack tape for the stitches. So when it's got paint on and the final coat of silver on top, we'll look at it and think, you know, which one we liked the best. It won't really matter too much on this model because you know, when you look from a distance, it'll look fine. And if this competes, it would only ever be in F4H, where they don't get to within, I think it's 5 meters to judge it. So they probably will see that there's tapes there, but they won't be able to see the detail. They won't see whether these are pinked and with stitches and tape, and these just pinked. So they won't notice. They'll know there's something there, but they won't know what's going on. So there we go. I'm not sure whether I'll do it this way though, because it's taken a considerable length of time to cut these strips of pinked covering. Down this end you can see this is where I started, and the lines are not particularly straight. I did draw lines and I was following the line, but you try and follow a line with a pair of pinking scissors, it's not so easy. But as you go down the wing, as I cut more and more strips, you'll see it gets more and more even, where I've actually got better at cutting the strips. So I dare say by the time I'd finished the model, I would have got the hang of it. But if I bring the angle down, I think you could see quite clearly that the stitch is nicely defined, and it probably looks more like a stitch is under the covering than just a piece of flat tape, which is how it looked with the 1/32. So I think we'll continue down this route. I shouldn't really be doing this rib taping and stuff like that. I should be getting on with something else, but the next thing to do is the cowl, and I'm really not looking forward to doing that, so I'm kind of avoiding, shall we say. Anyway, I'll do for now. It's just a quick catch up on what we're doing. I'm going to add some tape over this because I want to see how that looks. So perhaps I'll do that next, and then we'll take a look at that, and then that'll do for this little update. Alright, back soon. And we're back again. So I've added that strip of tape all the way along the top. It's basically a straight edge at the top that goes into the channel, and then a pinked edge that comes down here. In this instance I've made it exactly 12mm wide. Seems to look about right compared to the pictures. What I've done is I've run along the top of the tape, over the top of all of those screw heads that are supposed to be showing through, and then as the iron's moved to this way, I've followed it with my finger, pressing down quite hard. I had to keep moving my finger from one hand to the other because obviously the iron was heating up the metal, and then actually everything was quite hot and it was burning my finger. I was going to use a small piece of leather that I've got for panel beating and stuff like that, you know, for beating lithoplate, but I can't find it, so I abandoned that and just used my finger. But as you can see, it's actually worked quite well. So where the fabric is pushed down around the screws, it is pushed down. It's not, you know, it's fairly well defined. You can still see a little bit of white around it where it's raised, but that's fine. I didn't want it, you know, to have a big white area around it, which would indicate that the fabric wasn't touching the surface. And if you look closely at the stitches, you can see I've got the same, that it's pushed down far enough that there isn't really very much of a lift at the edge of the stitches. So I think it's going to look pretty good. So this needs a couple of coats of dope just to seal it, and then a quick sand just to take the edge off these, because these are too sharp when you put them down first of all. If you remember when we did the Oster, and I showed you all the panel tapes on that, what we do is we put a couple of coats of dope on, and then we gently sand it to take the sharp bits off, and then when we put the primer on, we then sand it again. And you'd think all of this paint and primer and dopes and everything would lose these pinked edges, but you don't. You do not lose it. It actually adds to it, and it looks much nicer when it's a little bit softer. So anyway, you'll see, but we'll compare this surface with the ailerons, which have been done with different materials. They've been done with Pinkett and 30-second tape, so we'll see how it all looks. But there we go. So hopefully you've had your fix of quarter scale chipmunk building. Alright, until the next time, I'll see you soon.